Hello everyone and welcome back to avchesslab. My name is Alex and today we're going to learn how to do the scholar's mate and stick all the way to the end as I will show you what to do in case your opponent is prepared, as you do not want to be caught with your queen out too early. Let's get started. So before I show you the scholar's mate, it is important to understand why we target the square on f7 with such a lethal attack that can lead to checkmate in 4 moves. So why is this square so weak? And why is it the weakest square on the chessboard? Let's take a look. I'm going to show you 3 pawns. The H pawn, the G pawn, and the F pawn. And of course, you can do the same thing on the other side. But since the king is closer to the king side, we're only going to concentrate on these 3 pawns highlighted by the color red. First, let's take a look at this pawn. It's only protected one time by the rook here. The pawn on g7 is only protected once by the bishop, and the pawn on f7 is only protected once by the king. But out of all these 3 squares, if we remove, for example, the h pawn from the board, this will give access to the rook to move around. And one of the problems with the rooks is that they lack open files. So by removing this pawn, we actually improve black's position. So let's put the pawn back. Now let's remove the G pawn. If we remove the G pawn, yes, this is a problem, but at least we give access to the bishop to move. Let's put the pawn back. Now, what happens if we remove the F pawn? The whole idea in chess is to checkmate the king. So removing one of the key pawns that's protecting the king, especially in this diagonal, is problematic. So because of this, being that it's only protected by one piece, the king, and if we actually remove it from the board, it becomes the weakest spot on the chessboard. And we can say the same thing for the pawn on f2. But since white starts the game always, the black side of the board on f7 is weaker. So now that we understand why we're attacking the pawn on f7, let's go ahead and show you how the scholar's mate is done. White starts with e4, e5, and here there's a couple of options. We have both bishop c4 and queen to h5, and I'm going to show you why one is better than the other. I like bishop c4 first. The reason is it gives me more flexibility in case that my opponent does know how to deal with the scholar's mate. And to be honest, most players do. So if you're going to try this, I would suggest to start with bishop to c4. The idea is that right from move 2, we're putting pressure on the pawn on f7 with the bishop. Here black can go knight to c6, and we go for queen to h5, again hitting the pawn on f7 with 2 pieces now. And in this situation, if black makes a clumsy move, for example, pawn to d6 or knight to f6, then we can go ahead and give the checkmate, like this. So this is the scholar's mate. Now let's go back a few moves, and instead of playing bishop to c4, let's play queen to h5 instead. And this move has its purposes as well. For starters, we are attacking a pawn right away. So this is going to force black to have to make a defensive move. But here, a lot of beginner players are also going to panic, and they're going to play this move to g6. And if they do, we're going to say thank you very much. We're going to attack the king, attack the rook, and it will be game over. So let's go back. So instead of g6, most players are going to go knight to c6, protecting the pawn. And here we can take the opportunity to again develop our bishop to c4 and renew the checkmate threat on f7 with our queen. And again, if black here makes a bad move like knight to f6, we can go ahead and capture the pawn with checkmate. But what happens if our opponent knows how to deal with this? And this is what I wanted to show you, which is the difference between the moves bishop to c4 and queen to h5. So coming back to the beginning, if we start a game, okay, with e4, e5, bishop to c4, if our opponent knows that we're going for the scholar's mate and they go for knight to f6 right away, this kills our entire operation of going queen to h5. Because if we put the queen there now, the knight is just simply going to take it off the board. So at this point, you have to go for another setup and this is what I mean. Bishop to c4 doesn't hurt. It's a very logical move. You can just continue to develop normally and nothing happens. Instead, if you go for queen to h5 on the second move, then black can actually start harassing your queen, attacking your queen, and developing himself, and it's going to lead to a very bad position for white. Here, if you play queen to h5, the best way to protect the pawn is to actually develop this knight to c6. It's a developing move and also protects the pawn on e5. Here, if you go for bishop to c4, attacking f7 twice as we mentioned, here black can just go g6 now. We're blocking the diagonal, and we're ready now to go bishop g7, maybe knight to f6, maybe knight g to e7, depending on what white does. If white continues here with queen to f3, renewing the checkmate threat, then again, black can develop a piece and protect. And if you look at this position, all we've done with the queen is move it around. We haven't really done anything with her. We're ready to go bishop to g7 with black, castle the king. In some situations, go knight to d4. This pawn can also come to d6 with some ideas of bishop to g4. This is very dangerous for white. And this is why I like to start with bishop to c4, just in case my opponent knows this setup. All right, if you reach this far, it's only fair that I show you how to continue the game here with white. The main threat here is that this knight is coming to d4, attacking both the queen and the pawn on c2. So we want to prevent that. So here we're going to play either knight to e2 or pawn to c3. I like knight to e2. It's a developing move, and at the same time we're getting ready to castle. Here black is going to continue with bishop to g7. We're going to castle our king. Black is going to castle. We're going to go pawn to d3, and after d6 we're going to go h3, preventing this bishop from coming to g4. And from here we just play a normal chess game. The only main difference here is that our queen is misplaced here on f3, and it's not very clear where we want to put her. Hope you guys enjoyed this quick video, and if you have done this checkmate before, let me know in the comments down below. If you're new to the channel and want to learn more about chess and increase your chess knowledge in general, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified when a new video is uploaded. As always, stay safe, have a great day, and show respect to your opponent. See you next time.